Let me ask you a question. What is the point of the United Nations, really? Isn't it just a dinosaur of an institution, a relic from the past, when people still wrote with fountain pens and smoked in meeting rooms? Isn't it just a bunch of diplomats who make speeches so dull that no one listens, and writes reports so long that no one reads them, and go to conferences with so complicated names that not even themselves remember why they're there? And look at the state of the world. I mean, really, what is the point of the United Nations? That's what some people say. But let me tell you, the UN is so much for so many that don't even know about it. Maybe also for you. I bet you that since you woke up this morning, you've made use of maybe 15 different UN conventions and frameworks. And you didn't have to go to any of those conferences or read any of those reports. It was all provided. Let me start with your coffee. Did you take milk? If so, that milk was probably safe due to the fact that the government is confirming with the Codex Alimentarius provided by Food and Agriculture Organization and WHO. The coffee itself may well have come from one of the farms up here in northern Thailand that was started many years ago with the support of UNODC or UNDP in order to allow farmers to move from opium to cash crops and coffee. Did you have cereal, toast? The grains were probably traded internationally in line with the frameworks that make sure that we keep fertilizers and pesticides in check so that they're safe for both human and nature, also in line with UN regulations. Even the label of the jam jar, you know, that microscopic font that no one over 35 years old can read without glasses, even that is thanks to the UN. And how did you get here? How did you get here today to beautiful Chiang Mai? Did you fly? Congratulations, you're alive. And frankly, it's very likely that it is partially thanks to the International Civil Aviation Organization, one of the oldest UN entities. ICAO provides the frameworks for everything from runway lights to the standards of the pilot training, even how much turbulence the plane can take. And the fact that you didn't collide mid-air was also thanks to multilateral cooperation. Or did you drive? At least the last bit. I did. And I saw a stop sign. And I recognized the red octagon. I knew it was a stop sign because it is following the Vienna Convention on road signs and signals. So you will recognize it. Whether you're renting that car in Tajikistan or Thailand or Tanzania, you don't need to learn a new alphabet just to survive the first intersection because it looks the same, because it uses UN standards. You see where I'm going? But then the question is, do we use this every day? Let's take something else. Do you use your mobile phone, the 5G, every day? Let's be honest, you do. And the global frameworks for using that network is brought to you by International Telecoms Union, another UN body. And now, in the digital area, we are of course focusing as a UN very much on AI, making sure that government, academia, private sector come together and create frameworks that allows AI to serve humanity, not divide it even further. The digital era that we're in is really transformative. And many say that it started during COVID. And we all remember COVID, right? You know that during COVID, whether you were in Bhutan or Burkina Faso, your government could benefit from the same frameworks and guidance on how to treat cases, how to trace cases, how to manage borders, and how to try to beat the virus, all led by WHO, another UN entity. Then, of course, every government will take what works for them in the context. That's part of the multilateral system. But we overcome COVID together. And without that multilateral support, God knows where we would have been. But COVID wasn't our first rodeo. Remember polio? Well, truth is, maybe you don't, because it's more or less eradicated thanks to the initiative led by UN and global partners in what we call the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. Measles, same thing there. Another UN-supported global vaccination. The truth is that as the UN, we support vaccination to 45% of the world's children today. Led by UNICEF, supported by the rest of us. So the chances are that when a little child rolls up their sleeve for the first time or get that drop of the vaccine, if it's an oral one, it's the UN holding the syringe or offering the drop. 1 in every 2 children. So if you have ever seen a giggling little toddler somewhere in the world, chances are that you've actually seen a UN success story. Okay, we do a lot of things, a lot of frameworks, all of this, but look at the state of the world, right? It is pretty bad. What is the UN doing? Every year, we're delivering humanitarian assistance and support to 115 million people. That's like 2 entire Thailands every year. It doesn't matter if it's the crisis in Haiti or Central African Republic, if it's in Sudan or if it's in Yemen, we are there. With life-saving assistance, food for the children, shelter for the families, support to the communities. When the typhoon strikes, or the flooding hits, or the earthquake comes, it's the UN, led by UNOCHA, that within hours offers that support to the government and the people. But of course, we are not only there when things are on fire. Some of our most important work is, of course, to make sure that the fires don't even start, right? And that's what we call development. It's about working with governments. It's about making sure that girls are staying in schools. About making sure that the farmers can access sustainable green financing to combat and survive in the area of climate change. It's about supporting government in developing policy frameworks of social protection that leaves no one behind. But you don't really hear this, because there's no disaster, no collapse, no emergency, no headline. It is just day-to-day development work. Every year, the UN works with 162 countries in our development system. 162 countries and territories. But let me be very clear. Development is not charity. Development is investment. It's investment in peace and prosperity every day. The UN is, of course, also home to many of our national conventions and international treaties. Some of them you will have heard of, some not. We have hundreds. No, that's not true. We have thousands of them. And some you will know, of course, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Convention of the Right of the Child, the Paris Agreement, and the recently signed, just here in neighboring Vietnam, the Convention Against Cybercrime. Some you may not have heard of, such as the Convention on the Reporting of Sending Objects into Outer Space. But whether you've heard of them or not, they are still shaping our world. They are giving us frameworks to come around. But the UN isn't perfect. We know that. When the UN was created in 1945, half of our current member states were not even countries. They were colonies, protectorates, struggling for independence. So we are no longer reflecting the world that we are here to serve. As the Secretary General often has said, it is a scandal that Africa doesn't have a seat on the permanent seat on the Security Council, and that Asia only has one, although it's home to half of the world's population. And sometimes we are being criticized for being bureaucratic, slow, even idealistic. And yes, sometimes we are all of those things. That is why we must reform, but that is also why we must endure. Because if we didn't have the UN today, we would need to create something just like it already tomorrow. Because for the boy standing in the rubble of the earthquake, or a farmer trying to save his livelihood from the climate change, or that child getting their first vaccine, the UN is not just an idea. It is the blanket around his shoulders. It is the good advice to keep his business going. It is the clinic light that stays on. It is a sign that the world will still show up together for those who need. That is why, when someone asks you, what is the point of the United Nations? I want you to tell them that the point of the United Nations is to create the future for our children that they deserve. Thank you very much.